Yo people, what's up? Welcome to another Magic the Gathering video on my Commander series, decks, whatever you want to call this. Today we're gonna look into green and white, the Selesnya color pattern, so to speak. And first of all, let me introduce to you the general. There she is, Trostani Selesnya's Voice. It's a legendary Dryad, it's a 2/5, so it's a bit hard to kill sometimes with damage spells, but you know. She costs 4, 2 green, 2 white, and she can do the following. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. Okay, that's already nice, so you always have a steady flow of life. And for 1 green and white, and tapping, you can populate, which means you put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of a creature token you control. So you can copy tokens with that ability. And as you might have guessed, yes, this is a token EDH deck, or it tries to be, more or less. So let's look through our creatures and see how we accomplish said goal. First off, we have the Armada Worm. It's quite a costly creature. It is a 5/5 trampler for whopping 6 mana, and 2 of them have to be green, 2 of them have to be white, so your color distribution is very important, your mana distribution on this one. And when he enters the battlefield, he actually puts a 5/5 green worm token with trample onto the battlefield. So you actually get 10 power with this, actually it's 8, with this 6 costing spell, which is quite nice. Also, one of the 5/5s is a token, so you can populate, which is nice. The Autochthon Worm, which is something I cannot even pronounce, a 9/14 for 15 mana, but there's Convoke on it. So with a lot of creature tokens, you can actually cast this fairly easy. And it's, I have to say, it's more of a style thing that's in here, because it makes sense, you know, Selesnya and stuff. But yeah. Next is Brimas, King of Oreskos. He is a 3/4 with Vigilance, and whenever he attacks, you put a 1/1 white cat soldier creature token with Vigilance onto the battlefield, attacking. And if he blocks, you do the same, but it's a blocking creature and it has also Vigilance, of course. And so it's a token generator if you can block or attack with him, which is quite nice. Desolation Twin, it's almost the same as with Armada Worm. The cool thing is you get 20 power with this 10 costing card. In an EDH, 10 mana is actually not that far off. And since you can then populate that 10/10 for just a few mana, it's awesome. Then we have Eleshnorn, Grand Cenobite. She's just amazing with like big creature masses. Basically your creatures get +2/+2, opponents' creatures get -2/-2. So she also can clear the board a bit from your enemies. Then we have Emara Tandris. She prevents all damage that will be dealt to token creatures. So first of all, if somebody wants to remove your tokens, at least if it's like a spot removal, they have to get past her. And if you equip her with, I don't know, lightning grievers, that's gonna be quite a problem. They have to be a bit more craftier than normally. Then we have the Herald of Anafenza. He has Outlast, which is of course one of the abilities from the Khans block, or the Khans of Tarkir, I think it was called. And Outlast is a sorcery ability that you can use in your turn, obviously, like sorceries. Pay 2 and a white and put a 1/1 counter on this thing, and whenever you activate the Outlast ability of Herald of Anafenza, you put a 1/1 white warrior creature token onto the battlefield. So this is a mana sink. Late game, if you have a lot of mana and you need to build up your token army, that's one way to do it. In the process, you get him stronger as well. Keswick Cage Breakers. Whenever they attack, you put tokens onto the battlefield equal to the creature cards in your graveyard. You spawn 2/2 wolf tokens. And after a board wipe, this can be quite brutal. since you, of course, the tokens will not go into the graveyard that were killed in the board wipe, but you'll have a few cards in your graveyard that will trigger with this, so he's nice. Loxodon Hierarch, it's like an anti-board wipe, not for all, but for some, since you can sacrifice him to regenerate each creature you control. It's quite nice, but of course there's some black removal that will totally screw with you, like in Garruk's Wake, for example, or Decree of Pain. Decree of Pain, I think it's called, the black one. And yeah, against that it will not work, but a lot of removal actually this can counter. The Kozili Primate is an artifact removal and enchantment removal. He has Exalted, which is nice, but it's not the main reason he's in here. And he can of course be brought back by things like Sun Titan, which will come in later. Scion of Vitu-Ghazi. When he enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, you put a white bird token with flying onto the battlefield, and then you populate. Obviously you will want to have something bigger than your white bird creature token onto the battlefield when you play this one. For example, a Desolation Twin would be nice, but of course you can also populate your bird and just get more flyers. Selesnya Guildmage, this is another mana sink in two ways. For one, you can pay 3 and a green to create Sapperling tokens, and for 3 and a white you can get your creatures +1/+1 until end of turn. And that's all creatures you control. So you can prepare a pretty nasty overrun with this if you have enough mana. The Soul of Zendikar, this is one of the bigger token generators. With bigger, I mean bigger tokens, not that he can create a lot more tokens. But for 3 and green, he can create a 3/3 beast token, and he can even do it from the graveyard. But you of course have to exile Soul of Zendikar for this. So yeah. Sun Titan, as mentioned before, it can get back some interesting creatures. Herald of Anafenza, the Kozili Primate, and some other things that we see later. Terastodon, I think it's a very, very good choice in this deck. Not only because it's just a very good like Plainswalker remover, enchantment remover, and stuff like that. You can do it on yourself in a pinch to create a bigger army. If for some reason, if you want to overrun an enemy and you're short a few damage, Terastodon might actually give you these few damage sometime if you like do it on your lands, for example, stuff like that, or if you need extra blockers. Next up is Trostani Summoner, which is quite a good creature actually. It costs 7 for a 1/1, which is weird, but of course she creates 3 tokens. She creates a 2/2 Knight, a 3/3 Centaur, and a 4/4 Rhino. Gives you a lot of stuff to populate with, which is awesome in this deck. Also, if you count it together, of course, that's a total of 10 power for 7 mana, which is nice. Then, next up, Vitu-Ghazi Guildmage. This is a bit of a more costly mana sink than the Selesnya Guildmage, but you can put 3/3 green Centaur tokens onto the battlefield, and you can also populate. So for 4 mana, if you have a Desolation Twin out, you can, for 4 mana, of course, create a 10/10 Eldrazi token, which is awesome. Voice of Resurgence, this can quite royally screw up opponents' plans. Because oftentimes they want to do something in your turn to maybe counter stuff you play or destroy stuff in response, and as long as this is on the battlefield, you'll get tokens from it. And of course these tokens are as strong and as tough as the number of creatures you control, which, yeah, this can go out of control quickly. So you have to respect it and play smart around this one. The Wayfaring Temple, its power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you populate. So they have to, if you have already a good amount of tokens, they have to decide, do you want to block it, jump block it and lose something, or give you more creatures. Most of the time they probably jump block it, but yeah. Wild Leaf Leech boosts almost all your creature tokens, some benefited doubly from the white and the green boost. And of course, if a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard the with leaf leech, put it onto the battlefield instead. So that's a nice little thing on the side. And last creature, the Worm Coil Engine, which is awesome. It's a 6/6 Death Touch lifelink, and if you kill it, it basically splits into two parts, a Death Touch and a lifelink part, which then you can populate, which is awesome, and lore-wise it's just sweet, I think. Alright, let's go to the instances. Beast Within, green staple in my opinion, and you can use this in two ways. Give you a piece to populate with. That sounds so dirty if you say it like that, right? Give you a piece to populate with. And of course you can destroy other people's stuff with it, which is nice. Chord of Calling with a lot of tokens. This can be very interesting. Druid's Deliverance. You can prevent all combat damage, then populate. You soon will see a common theme in these spells. Creatures you control gain is indestructible and at the end of turn populate. This is anti-board wipe of course, and you get more creatures out of it, which is nice. Secure the Waste. Lots of tokens you can pour onto the battlefield. Sundering Grove is destroy artifact or enchantment, then populate. And Trostani Judgment, exile a creature, and then populate. So yeah, I have a lot of populate in this deck of course. And the White Sun Senate for a lot of cat tokens, and then you of course shuffle it as with every Sun's Senate into your deck again, so you can do it again later. Alright, sorceries are up next. This one is actually acquired this quite recently with some of the commander decks. I bought the Commander Anthology finally, and this one is really great. You draw a card for each creature you control. Yeah, this can be nasty. Courses of Chord. Put a 3/3 green creature token onto the battlefield, Centaur of course, and then populate. So you want to play this of course with a big token out on the battlefield already. If you just populate the Centaur, it's fine. You get a 6 power bodies for 6 mana. It's not great, but it's something. Hour of Revelation. It's of course one of the board wipes from Hour of Devastation. And of course with 10 non-land permanents onto the battlefield, this costs 3 less, which with a token deck in a multiplayer game is almost guaranteed. Kirtar's Wrath. It's a destroy all creature board wipe, and they can't be regenerated, so this is, you cannot outplay your own board wipe with the, what was it called, the Loxodon Hierarch. Sadly enough, you can of course use it on your Hour of Revelation, because that only destroys things. It does not say they cannot be regenerated. But back to Kirtar's Wrath. It has Threshold, which means you have to have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, which happens often in EDH, let's be honest. And if that's the case, you get 2 white 1/1 spirit tokens after everything is destroyed, which is quite nice, so you get like a head start in front of everyone. Martial Coup is quite great, but not as great as it could be, of course. You put X white 1/1 soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield, and if X is greater than 5, you destroy all other creatures. What does that mean, all other? I'm pretty sure that means everything else but these soldier tokens you just created. So it's not you just destroy other creatures you don't control. It's you create you destroy everything else that is not the soldiers you created with Martial Coup. So it's still quite an awesome board wipe for a token deck. Overrun. Yeah, I don't have to say anything about this, I think, with a token deck. It's auto-include, I think. Same with Overwhelming Stampede, especially if you have things like Desolation Twin in your deck. Because making every 1/1 token +10/+10 until end of turn is kinda great. Also giving them trample. Phyrexian Rebirth is a nasty board wipe in my opinion. You destroy all creatures, then create XX colorless horror artifact creature token where X is the number of creatures destroyed this way. So you can wipe the board, put a huge creature onto the battlefield, and then start to populate like crazy. Also, you can, for example, combine this or react to this with Rootborn Defense, only destroy your opponent's stuff and then get a little bit smaller creature, but still something pretty badass. So there's a lot of interaction with your own stuff. You can use the Loxodon Hierarch to regenerate your stuff in response to this. It's actually pretty great. Rampant Growth for, well, Rampant Growth, of course. Shamanic Revelation is basically the same as Collector's Collective Unconscious. So you draw a card for each creature you control. The Ferocious part will sometimes come to pass, but it's not that, well, it's not that important really. I mean, 4 life for each creature with power 4 or greater is good, but it's not the main aim of this card. Slime Molding is a late game powerhouse. If you can create a huge token and then start populating that thing, that's gonna be nasty. Alright, artifacts. The Altar of the Brood is kind of a semi-quasi alternative win condition. And it says whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent puts the top card of his library into his graveyard. Yeah, of course your tokens count as permanents, so if you have a nasty token creating machine going, this can starve your opponents quite fast of their libraries, so that's a nice thing. Bow of Nylea is a very key artifact in this deck actually. It makes every creature when they attack Bow of Nylea is one good artifact that this deck needs desperately, because attacking with 5/1/1 creatures isn't threatening at all, because they can be blocked by almost anything. Attacking with 5/1/1 creatures with Death Touch, on the other hand, that's a lot more tricky. So this bow provides exactly that. Attacking creatures you control have Death Touch. And for 1 and a green and tap, you can choose from a multitude of options. +1/+1 counter on target creature, ping flyers for 2, gain relive, put up to 4 target cards from your graveyard on the bottom of your library in any order. So you have a bit of options with this, but I mainly included it for the Death Touch. Commander Sphere for more mana, for more color spread, so to speak, because I need both colors in great quantities. The Eldrazi Monument is of course for large token creating decks a must in my opinion, because it makes your tokens indestructible and flying and +1/+1. Of course you have to be quite careful. If a board wipe happens and you cannot get rid of this, you might be fucked, I think is the best way to say it. Lightning Greaves. There's some key creatures to put this on. Emaratandris is one of them. Your General might be one of them. There's a few who can profit from this. Orochi Hatchery, that's also one of the late game things, because you pay XX, and of course both X have to be the same, so if you want to have 5 hatch or charge counters on this thing, you have to pay 10 mana in total. But of course, then it says for 5 and a tap, put a 1/1 green snake creature token onto the battlefield for each charge counter on Orochi Hatchery. So this is one of the things that can enable Eldrazi Monument like crazy. Selesnya Cluestone, Selesnya Keyrune, and Selesnya Signet and Soul Ring, all for the same purpose: mana, mana, mana. Alright, next up are the enchantments. Cage of Hands, one of my favorite white enchantments, because it's very versatile. You can return it to your hand if a board wipe happens, if you have enough mana of course. You can re-equip it onto more difficult creatures if you so desire. It's quite nice. Dictate of Heliot, you flash it, which is quite cool, because you can screw with combat because of that. And it says creatures you control get +2/+2. So good for a token deck. Growing in Ranks does literally what it says. At the beginning of each of your upkeeps you populate, so it literally grows your rank every turn as long as you have at least one token creature out. This also completely negates the Eldrazi Monument, of course. Intangible Virtue. Creature tokens you control get +1/+1 and have Vigilance. That's nice. Marshal's Anthem. Creatures you control get +1/+1. And if you kick it, you can return stuff from your graveyard to the battlefield. With stuff, I of course mean creatures. Miriari's Wake also buffs your creatures and doubles the amount of mana you get from your lands, which is awesome in this deck because you have a lot of mana sinks to create tokens. Oblivion Ring, remove opponents' permanents if they are nasty. Sigil of the Nyan Gods, if you want to create one huge creature with trample, this is the thing. Enchanted creature get +1/+1 for each creature you control, and because that's a thing since the Hour of Revelation and Amonkhet, cycling. Yes, you can cycle it if it's useless. I think cycling in EDH is less important in some situations, but it's nice to have, I think. Zendikar Resurgent as well doubles your mana, which is awesome. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you draw a card. This is not something that will happen often in this deck, but it's like an upside for nothing. I basically play this because of the doubling of mana, because I want to put all that mana that I produce late game into these mana sinks to create more tokens and just to get a huge army. But of course, if I can cast creature spells late game and get more cards, that's also fine. Now we come to the Plainswalker, and you can see already I have triple elspeth, which of course, as we know now, in Ixalan, as soon as it's released, I think, Plainswalker are gonna be legendary, meaning I can only have one of these elspeths onto the battlefield at one time. If I play a second one of them has to die, basically. So it makes it a little bit weaker, but most of the time you'll have one Plainswalker on the field already, and that thing will die soon. So I do not expect to have them out in Union a lot. So let's just see what we have here. We have Elspeth Tyrell. For +2, you gain 1 life for each creature you control. -2, you put 3 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield. And for -5, destroy all other permanents except for lands and tokens. That's actually quite a nasty Plainswalker, because he starts out with 5. And if you have a decent token army, you get +2, you gain a lot of life, and if your opponent cannot get rid of Elspeth in that turn, then you have a mostly one-sided board wipe next turn. So she is actually quite nasty, probably one of the most nastiest one of the 3. Elspeth Knight Errant. For +1 you can create a white 1/1 soldier creature token. Also for +1 you can get a creature +3/+3 and flying until end of turn. And for -8 for the rest of the game, artifact creatures, artifacts, creatures, enchantments and lands you control are all indestructible. That's nice, but I don't expect to get there, to be honest. And Elspeth Sun's Champion. For +1, a 1/1 white soldier creature token, you can create this, and -3 is actually quite a nice ability. You destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. Of course you have to watch yourself, because your deck tends to boost creatures with enchantments and stuff, so be careful with that ability, it might hit your tokens. But generally speaking, that's a very nice thing, because you can use it as soon as he comes into the game. And of course -7, which is also quite hard to reach. You get an emblem with creatures you control get +2/+2 and have flying. If you get this and have a token army, the enemy is just gone. There's no way. And of course, the last Plainswalker, this is a different one. It's Gideon, the ally of Zendikar. For +1, you can turn him into a 5/5 human soldier, which basically does not eat damage this turn, so you can attack for free with him. For 0, you can create 2/2 white knight allies, which is okay. I don't really care if they're allies, but it's the 2/2 Knight token that I'm interested in. And for -4, which you can do obviously immediately, kills of course Gideon right off if you do that, but if the opponent's board is overwhelming in some way, or if he has, let's say, a Vampire Hex Mage on the battlefield, a -4 is a very smart thing. So for -4 you get an emblem which says creatures you control get +1/+1. Alright, that has been the Plainswalker. There is some lands we need to talk about here. It's not too much, so let's be quick. Where are they? Foundry of the Consuls. For it's a colorless mana generator, and for 5 tap you can sacrifice it and put 2 1/1 colorless Doctor artifacts with flying onto the battlefield. Well, they're tokens. That's fine. It can be nice to have like surprise flying Doctor tokens from out of nowhere. The other thing is the Growth of the Guardian, which I'm quite a fan of. For 3 green and white, you can tap it, and then tap 2 untapped creatures you control, which shouldn't be a problem with a token deck. And then you sacrifice the Growth of the Guardian and put an 8/8 green and white elemental creature token onto the battlefield. So yeah, that's another possibility to get a huge token to populate with. And the last thing that we need to talk about is the spawning bed. Well, it's not quite the last thing actually. The spawning bed for 6 and tap, you can sacrifice it and then put 3 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Cyan creature tokens onto the battlefield, which you can sacrifice for mana. So if you can get them onto the battlefield and populate a lot, you get quite amazing mana sacrifice creatures there. So if you want to like play a huge martial coup, for example, this is one way to do it. Sun Battle Grove, well, that's nothing we need to talk about actually. Urza's Factory, that's the last one we need to see. That's also a mana sink. It's quite a heavy one actually. For 7 and tap, you put a 2/2 Assembly Worker artifact creature token onto the battlefield. Yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of mana sinks to get some creature tokens. Generally speaking, this is an interesting deck because you neither have a lot of like crazy creatures that can just smash through the opponents. You don't have a commander that can just go in for 21 damage, and you don't have a lot of alternative win conditions. You basically need to overrun your opponent. And of course that takes time, and that's, I think, one of the biggest disadvantages of this deck. The enemy sees it coming. He can see your board build up, and even though you are able to modify the damage output in an instant with overruns and the enchantment with flash that gives you +1/+1 and stuff like that, it's still kind of predictable when you will come for a strike, especially if they have a good defense. You will have to set it all on one card, and that's dangerous in Magic, of course. Also, decks with a lot of board wipes will set you back a lot of the time, but of course you only lose tokens, so basically you can say you are better off than other players who actually lose real creatures and real cards. But of course the effort you put in is lost, so you have to build up again. And of course there's like some specific cards which are very nasty for your deck. You have a lot of things with charge counters on it, or some important stuff with counters on it, and Vampire Hex Mages can ruin that stuff, especially your Plainswalkers or the Orochi Hatchery. And generally speaking, there's just some spells that will royally disrupt your plans. There is the blue return all creatures to their owner's hands, which you don't control. The one-sided board wipe for blue, which is included in most blue decks, that is devastating for you. Insurrection, of course, is basically can kill you if it hits at the right time. So you have to be very aware of your opponent's playstyle, of what your opponents could do. And actually, I think you shouldn't wait for that one big sweeping strike. You should always peck in a little bit with this deck, so you get them low quite early, and then you don't need as big as an army to finish them, you know, because if you amass an army that can deal 40 damage at one strike, then you have to kinda, you know, live with the fact that an opponent can steal your stuff and do it to you. So you have to, in the process of creating an army, you have to poke away at your enemies, I think. But overall, this is a kind of fun deck. It's something I normally don't really play. Green and white are not the colors I like. Especially green. I'm not a green player at all. So this is a deck that was quite interesting for me to create, because normally that's not my color pie that I enjoy. So with that, I would like to thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for another Commander video. Let's see, how many do we actually have left? Looks like we have I think two decks left we need to look at. So next time we're gonna look at Vorel's Experiment, which is blue and green, which is an awesome combination actually, even though I don't like green as much. But blue makes it up. Alright, thank you for watching, see you next time, take care.